As you guys already know, I have quite an affinity for this weapon, for the level of skill it demands to use effectively and the satisfaction it produces when that level is reached. There is truly something special about 2-tapping a medium that is hard to put into words, but is pretty much summarized by the satisfying ka-ching you receive after nailing a nasty headshot. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down the CB-01 repeater, finding out all the ins and outs of the weapon, how to use it at different ranges, what specializations and gadgets pair with it the best, and an in-game aim training routine with the new Practice Range 2.0 that will help you bring out the full potential of this weapon on a daily basis. So if this video helped you out in some way, shape, or form, please smash that like button. It's a small button for you, but it means the world to me. Also, subscribe for all things the finals, as well as the most comprehensive weapon guides in the game. Let's jump into it. The CB-01 repeater does 84 damage to the body and 126 damage to the head, has 8 bullets and 672 damage per mag. Its empty reload time is 5.05 seconds. However, the speed loader reload is 1.47 seconds. So if you're in a pinch, you can just simply use the speed loader, melee cancel, and get right back into the action. And the tactical reload varies depending on how many bullets you have left. Its damage drop-off minimum range is 40 meters, and its maximum range is 45 meters. It can eliminate a light in 0.78 seconds with 2 body shots or headshots. It can eliminate a medium at 1.56 seconds with 3 body shots and 2 headshots at 0.78 seconds. And a heavy at 3.12 seconds with 5 body shots and 1.56 seconds with 3 headshots. The repeater gives you the option to equip sights, which are 2 iron sight variations, an HCOG, red dot sight, adder reflex, and looking glass. Now, there is no best option when it comes to picking one. It is all up to preference. For me, I jumped between the red dot sight and the iron sights. The red dot sight provided me with pinpoint accuracy at the farther end of medium range, and the stock iron sight that is a little bit harder to use at those ranges, but makes it easier to track an opponent when they close the gap and get within that 10-meter range. This is because the visual clarity that it provides with the sight being removed. Now that we know the stats of this weapon, how exactly do we use it efficiently, starting with the 15 to 40 meter range? The strength of this weapon relies on the ability to do burst damage. You either go big or go home, because when it comes to medium and heavy, the body shot TTK for this weapon is not that impressive. So landing headshots at these ranges is quite important, because even though you can peak shot and pump out huge damage, a lot of people underestimate how fast an AR, Lewis gun, M60, and even an XP54 can burn your health every time you do decide to peak. Because what most are forgetting is that if you are playing against a competent opponent, they will not just lay on the trigger when you go back into cover. They will also take that time to either pause firing or reload, to inevitably delete you if you are taking too long to land your shots. This is just one of the aspects that makes this weapon high risk, high reward, and where the skill gap honestly begins. So besides landing your headshots and being able to peak shots, maintaining height is also a priority. And from there, learning how to position yourself properly while being constantly on the move. This weapon, just like the sniper, can be extremely punishing, because if the opponent is able to close the gap and get within 10 meters, the difficulty of taking them down rises exponentially. So with this weapon, always keep in mind 3 rules. Maintain height, don't stay in a position for more than 5 seconds after firing. On a side note, the only time you can ignore this rule is if you're team firing and your party is providing ample cover, or if you are on height, defending a cash out. And the last rule, always keep your next position in mind so that you can decisively, after exposing your location, make your way there. Moving on to close range, aka within 10 meters, this is where things truly get difficult, especially when you are in higher level lobbies, against an opponent that lands at least 60% of their shots in their mag. Trust me when I say this, they will delete you if you do not land your shots. This is because the weakness of the repeater is measured by the player's mechanical skill, and the accuracy demanded at medium to far range is equally necessary at close range. On top of that, the hipfire for this weapon, even when not sprint strafing, is unreliable. So when engaging an opponent that closes the gap, you still have to use snap firing to continuously recenter that target and ensure you land your shots. Now, the majority of shots that you will land at such a close range will be body shots, because at this point you're just aiming at the body to give yourself the biggest target possible. possible. I'll be straightforward with you guys, if you get used to this weapon, eliminating a medium or a light is not too bad at this range. However, when it comes to heavy, your chances of survival drops drastically, and if you ever have one close the gap on you, I highly recommend that you try your best to put distance between you two, because if you engage them at 80% health or more, they'll be able to tank the hits unless you nail 3 headshots back to back. The only way I would suggest engaging is if that is the only option, and if it is at an off angle, or waiting until they are at half health. Needless to say, this weapon has a lot of strength, but engaging an 80% to full health heavy within 10 meters is not one of them. Now that we understand how to use the repeater at different ranges, how exactly do we use and fire it in engagements? As you heard me say before, when using this weapon, you have to snap fire. Snap firing is the process at which the player first acquires the target, centers that target while in hip fire, then proceeds to aim down sight, then fire within 2 seconds after doing so. This allows the player to be decisive with their shot rather than lingering in ADS, second guessing themselves, and end up more times than not being wide open for an attack on their flank or blind spot. This type of firing is quite difficult. However, the better you get at target acquisition, centering, and click timing, the easier this process becomes. If you want an example of how to do this as efficiently as possible, I've mentioned on my last repeater video that I highly recommend checking out Sanguine. If you want to see a live perfect example of this technique, out of every streamer I've seen use this weapon, he is the only one that can do this consistently with extreme accuracy. Besides firing, like I said before, positioning is extremely important. Even at medium range, you have to treat this weapon like a sniper, because the repeater excels in its ability to do huge chunks of damage with every single shot. It does not continuously do a consistent amount of damage over time, such as an AR, meaning that you do not necessarily have to sit there and track the target until they are eliminated, but rather utilize the environment around you as cover to maximize your damage output and minimize the damage taken. This is what is known as peeking. This skill requires patience to perfectly time each shot and for the player to be also proficient at snap firing. Another thing to note here is that if you're facing a medium or a heavy between 10 to 30 meters, you have to always be aiming for the head, because that is where the high risk, high reward portion of this weapon is truly emphasized. If you are peak shotting and landing only body shots, believe me when I say this, they will eliminate you faster than you can pull off that last shot. Players really underestimate how fast 1.5 seconds is, which is approximately the same amount of time that a lot of meta automatic weapons at this range can delete you with just body shots. And that's not even mentioning the TTK for headshots. So even though the player is peaking and minimizing their damage, they are still receiving damage nonetheless, and will inevitably be eliminated if they are not going for headshots. But don't worry, because in the training routine I have for you later in this video, I'm going to teach you how to not only get better at snap firing, but also double the amount of headshots you land with this weapon guaranteed. Moving on to specializations, there are only 2 that came to mind that specifically enhance this weapon. Depending on your playstyle, the first is the dematerializer. This specialization, in my opinion, is the best for players that have a more aggressive playstyle. It enhances all aspects I mentioned before, such as peeking and allowing you to constantly reposition because of its ability to remove structures and spontaneously create sightlines. It even excels at escaping and creating distance when an enemy is pursuing you. The next specialization is the turret gun. This is for a player that has more of a defensive playstyle and can be quite effective when defending cashouts that are out in the open, because it not only makes the player think twice about pushing your blind spot, but if they place the turret at another angle that is still aiming at the direction of the opponent the player is also aiming at, it will not only provide them more forgiveness for the repeater with consistent DPS in between your shots or shots missed, but also forces their opponent to decide whether or not they want to eliminate the turret or the player first. And if you have competent teammates, they will take advantage of this distraction to either flank or put more pressure on the opposing team. Moving on to gadgets, the one that I found most useful are the gadgets that assist in the player's mobility, ones that will help with either repositioning or used to escape and create distance, with the first obviously being the jump pad and zipline, giving the player quick access to fast horizontal and vertical movement, and in combination with the D-mat is insanely effective when creating distance or escaping an opponent trying to close the gap. In my opinion, at least one of these 2 gadgets is a necessity, and I know it's cringe for some players to use both, but in my experience with this weapon, weapon, the more movement, the better. The next is Goo Grenade. The first benefit it has is the ability to close off pathways, to escape and put distance between you and the opponent, or gain height by creating platforms to climb vertically. More importantly, it excels at creating cover spontaneously, allowing the player to not only peek shot in areas that otherwise did not provide any cover, but to also throw behind them if the player is on height defending a cash out to prevent third parties from firing at their back. The Explosive Mine can also be used as a deterrent if the opponent is pushing you, and if any class besides Heavy decides to pursue you after getting hit with the blast, they can easily be taken out with 1 to 2 shots from the repeater, especially if it's a light. And lastly, we have the Pyronade. While not as useful as the Goo Grenade, it serves the same purpose, by acting as a deterrent and closing off pathways, providing an opportunity for players to reposition or escape. So one more thing I do want to note here, and that is besides the gadgets and specializations, red and orange canisters are so useful for this weapon, especially the red canisters, that can provide a good amount of initial damage at range, allowing the player to easily clean up eliminations with the repeater. I highly recommend that you utilize them as much as you can, because if not, you are leaving a ton of damage on the table. So before we jump into this training routine, I have a special message for my partners at Apex Gaming PCs. If you're looking for quality, balance, and performance that will allow you to fully immerse yourself into the arena at a price that won't destroy your wallet, then look no further than the Apex Bronze. With a Radeon RX 6500 XT and an AMD Ryzen 5 4500 6-core with 16GB of DDR4 3600 RAM, this PC can handle anything the arena throws at you. So forget the hassle of trying to build a PC yourself, just sit back, relax, and let Apex take care of the rest. On top of that, Apex has got you covered in case anything goes wrong, providing a standard 2-year parts and lifetime labor warranty. If you're interested, I'll leave the link pinned in the comments as well as a description. And also, don't forget to use my discount code HAZED for 10% off your Apex Gaming PC. Now without further ado, let's jump into it. The first thing we are going to do is start with centering. Let's make our way up to the top of the roof, use the running target, and try to stay within a 10-meter range. Maintain centering on the target at all times, while frequently going into ADS for 2-second intervals, utilizing model tracking to aim at the chest of the dummy. I found that focusing here provides more forgiveness and leaves room for potential headshots. Make sure before going into ADS, your target is almost completely centered while in hip fire. This is to minimize the amount of micro adjustments needed when snap firing, thus minimizing the potential mistakes made. Keep in mind that this is going to be your target acquisition sequence for every scenario, because we will be snap firing for the entirety of the routine, regardless if you are on MNK or controller. Do this for 5 minutes. Next, we are going to remain on the roof and train the hardest part of this weapon, and that is snap firing at close range, with a scenario I like to call front to back. Now, if the weapon's hip fire is not buffed by the time you watch this video, I'll tell you right now, unless the player is literally kissing their opponent, there is a high chance that they're going to miss some shots while hip firing, regardless if the player is sprint strafing or strafing normally. This is why snap firing is also used at close range to quickly acquire and recenter the target before firing. So what we're going to do is start by first getting in front of the target, then proceed with the rest of the target acquisition sequence. Stay aimed down sights for a maximum of 2 seconds with this rhythm: 1, 2, fire. Fire 1 time and quickly sprint, then slide behind the target to turn around and snap fire as many times needed to eliminate it. The reason why we are moving from front to back is to create the habit of staying mobile within a 5-meter range. You never want to stand toe to toe against an opponent, especially if they are a medium or heavy, but rather emphasize the burst damage of the weapon and stay as evasive as possible while putting in as much damage as possible. Remember, if they are using an automatic weapon, they have to maintain a constant flow of DPS to win the engagement, while the repeater only needs to land a few shots. This is how to make those shots count. Do this for 5 minutes straight. After we're done with that, we're going to make our way to the firing range. You can stand still for this or add a layer of movement to increase difficulty. Get right up to the yellow barrier and utilize our target acquisition sequence by snap firing at every single target from front to back, keeping that 1-2 rhythm I mentioned in the previous scenario. I want you to make absolutely sure you are centered before aiming down sights. I recommend that you start slow and progressively go faster. Do this for 3 minutes non-stop. The next part of this scenario, we're going to utilize our cover and duck after every single shot to get used to centering and acquiring a target right after popping out of cover. Do this too for 3 minutes straight, strictly adhering to the target acquisition sequence. We are now going to remain at the firing range to practice our left and right side peek shots. So go to the equipment station and grab the goo grenades. Throw one right here, starting on either side, peek shot the first moving target in the front. Eliminate that target 10 times on each side before moving on. Next, make your way into the firing range and between both moving targets to perform my staple 360 dynamic and static tracking, where you are going to use static tracking, aka your movement, to mirror and track the target, leaving the reticle stationary, only moving it to make tiny micro adjustments in order to maintain the target, and use dynamic tracking, aka counter strafing, for the other target. If you run out of ammo in between targets, use the speed loader and melee cancel as soon as you reach 5 bullets. Creating this habit will help you get right back into the action when you're in a pinch, instead of having to reload the entire mag. And if you do not have the best aim, I highly recommend that you use mirroring as a primary way of tracking both targets until you get more comfortable using the weapon. Do this for 3 minutes straight. For the next scenario, we are going to utilize our goo grenades again, find the target running around the building, place one goo grenade here, after that get out the jump pad and place it right here. Essentially, we're going to force the dummy to hit the jump pad and use the goo to prevent it from going any further around the building. Once the dummy is eliminated, it will automatically spawn at this point of the building, allowing us to consistently practice our snap firing against vertical targets. Wait for the target to hit the climax of the jump, then proceed to snap fire until the target is eliminated. Do this for 3 minutes. The next and last scenario in the practice range is very important, especially if you're trying to hold a position such as defending a cash out, and that is rooftop snap firing. I want you to find a decent head glitch, standing or crouching in this position, then continuously snap fire at the first moving target until it is eliminated. If you want to add more difficulty, you may position yourself so that the back moving target is visible and snap fire until it is eliminated. Do this for 3 minutes straight. So that's about it in the practice range, but we're not quite done yet, because we need to apply what we learned in live engagements before jumping into either World Tour or Ranked. And no matter how sweaty it may be, Team Deathmatch will definitely solidify the habits we just learned. Now, unlike other weapons where I tell you to focus on strictly aim while warming up with the repeater is going to be a little bit different. This is because the repeater is extremely punishing if the player is just strictly focusing on aim. It will cause the player to neglect the environment around them because they will be tunnel visioned trying to land their shots. It is very important to not only be aware of your surroundings to pick out targets from the environment, but to also use the environment to your advantage as cover. Achieving success with the repeater is the combination of awareness, movement, and mechanical skill. The player has to move to minimize damage, and at the same time has to land shots to maximize damage. So for this weapon, I don't want you to think too hard on aim when live in game. All I want you to do is put your focus onto mobility and position yourself to quickly snap fire when the opportunity presents itself. If you challenge an opponent and land the first shot but consecutively miss the next few, remove yourself from the engagement, reposition, recuperate, then re-engage. My rule of thumb is if it takes more than half the mag to eliminate one opponent, it's time to back off. While you may think you have them on the ropes, there's a very high chance that their teammate is about to flank you. If you prioritize correct positioning, staying on the move, and put in as much damage as possible when the opportunity arises, I promise you the eliminations will come. You do not need to thirst kills to acquire them, stick to the weapon's strengths, and keep your distance with cover. That pretty much wraps up the entire masterclass. Now, I do want to say a disclaimer for the weapon. No matter what you hear on social media about the repeater being easy and overpowered, believe me when I say this, it is a very hard weapon to master, especially when your opponents are getting progressively harder. Learning how to use this weapon is a trek in itself. You will have games where you will go negative, games where you feel like you can't land a shot no matter how hard you try. But believe me when I say this, it is all part of the process. And if you consistently do this routine, I promise you, no, I guarantee, you will absolutely slay out with this weapon and experience one of the most satisfying feelings this game has to offer. So we've reached the end of the masterclass, and if you found this video informative, please smash that like button. It's a small button for you, but it means the world to me. Also, subscribe for all things to finals and the most comprehensive weapon masterclasses in the game. Peace and love, guys, and I'll see you in the arena.